Continuing to episode 9, we are shown Sword Maiden's past when she was still adventuring with her party. The party consisted of adventurers, all of them at the gold level, totaling 6 individuals. Their leader was a man with samurai armor wielding a katana. This party was on a journey to defeat the Demon King and was currently being confronted by several enemy forces. At that time, Sword Maiden had already experienced an incident with goblins that left her traumatized. Because of this, even though they were on a journey to slay the Demon King and facing many high-level demons, she was grateful that their opponents were not goblins. Back to the present, Goblin Slayer and his party are on a ship to battle a giant sea serpent. The sea serpent's skin is too tough and can heal small wounds it receives. Arrows from the elf have no impact on it. Nevertheless, the dwarf instructs the elf to keep shooting to divert the serpent's attention. At the same time, Goblin Slayer throws a spear he had crafted earlier. The spear successfully pierces the sea serpent, enraging it to the point of biting the ship they are on. Instantly, Priestess uses her Miracle of Light to distance the serpent. As the sea serpent retreats, the lizardman also throws a spear enhanced with magic. For now, it seems like the sea serpent has been defeated. However, they are in a disadvantageous position as their ship has suffered significant damage. Before this, Goblin Slayer and the others set out for their usual goblin extermination mission. According to information received from the receptionist, there was a mission report about goblin attacks in a fishing area. However, upon reaching the destination, the creatures they found were not goblins but Homoposesians. From the outside, these creatures resembled goblins. However, the Homoposesians could speak and clarified Goblin Slayer's misunderstanding. As descendants of the great octopus god, they swore never to harm fishing grounds. If they weren't the cause, Priestess asked if they knew why the fish population was decreasing. Thus, Priestess could help clear suspicions against the Homoposesians. It seems they did know the cause, which was a sea serpent. The dwarf seemed to be familiar with the creature, but as far as he knew, the sea serpent's habitat was in deep waters. The Homoposesians themselves were also puzzled. There seemed to be something driving the creature from somewhere. Despite hearing all this, Goblin Slayer decided to go back home since they were not goblins. However, the others wanted to help the troubled villagers in this situation, so Goblin Slayer had no choice but to join in. Back to the present, Goblin Slayer and the others are getting ready in case the sea serpent reappears after its earlier defeat. Goblin Slayer orders the others to throw their spears as soon as the creature emerges. Shortly after, the sea serpent appears again with an uninjured body. Then, Priestess uses her Miracle of Light so that the others can throw their spears. They have also prepared a finishing move that will be executed by the dwarf. While the others throw their spears, the dwarf throws a bottle containing powder to be used as a spell medium. The dwarf casts the Water Walk spell on the sea serpent to prevent it from entering the water again. This way, the sea serpent will gradually run out of breath. To expedite the process, the elf successfully shoots an arrow through the serpent's eye into its brain. After successfully defeating it, Goblin Slayer reflects on how he wishes goblins could be exterminated as easily as this. Upon returning to the guild, Goblin Slayer appears displeased with the receptionist because the mission he took was not a goblin mission. Goblin Slayer protests as he ended up fighting another monster whose name he had forgotten. When the receptionist wants to hear more details about the monster, Goblin Slayer only mentions that the monster was very long and a species of fish. Although Goblin Slayer didn't want to take that mission, his party still receives rewards for completing it. They are given ornaments made from fossilized sea creatures. They decide to take one item each and sell the rest. The lizardman chooses a dragon jawbone that has crystallized over time. The elf opts for a gold-colored carving, mentioning that she will send it to her sister. Moreover, items from the sea are very rare for elves. Next, Priestess chooses to take a pearl, intending to offer it to Mother Earth. Then, the dwarf takes a whale horn. Finally, Goblin Slayer is the last one who hasn't made a choice. Upon reaching the farm, Goblin Slayer wants to give a souvenir to the farm girl. She looks very delighted when she learns about this. Goblin Slayer then presents the seashell ornament he had chosen earlier. The farm girl feels grateful to receive it and even promises to take good care of it to prevent it from getting lost. The next day, for some reason, Goblin Slayer was summoned to the guild's administrative room above. Upon entering, it turned out Sword Maiden was there. Spontaneously, Goblin Slayer asked if there was a goblin problem, and indeed there was. Inside, there was also a nun under Sword Maiden who joined out of concern. After that, Sword Maiden informed that goblins had appeared on the highway between Watertown and this city towards the capital. Goblin Slayer then confirmed if there was information about the number, nest, or other distinctive features of the goblins. According to testimony, there were about 20 of them. The goblins had the same tattoo, but they didn't know the location of their nest. The goblins also rode wolves. Actually, Sword Maiden planned to attend a meeting held in the capital. So the nature of her mission was not to exterminate goblins but to be a guard. From the information obtained, Goblin Slayer concluded that the goblins were a nomadic tribe without a nest. Therefore, Goblin Slayer will also call his comrades. The nun under her wondered why Sword Maiden insisted on choosing Goblin Slayer when other adventurers could handle goblins. Sword Maiden stated that Goblin Slayer is the man she trusts the most. After that, they went to the capital by horse-drawn carriage. Sword Maiden and her subordinate were in the carriage, Lizardman and the elf sat next to the coachman, and the rest walked to keep watch. Sword Maiden had agreed to pay a bag of gold in advance and another bag upon arrival. Besides the substantial reward, they were also pleased to have the opportunity to see the capital. As they were about to leave the city, Goblin Slayer asked Lizardman to stop the carriage for a moment. Coincidentally, they were passing through the farm area and the farm girl was working there. It seemed that Goblin Slayer wanted to bid farewell before going to the capital. At that moment, Sword Maiden called Priestess. She wanted to know who the girl Goblin Slayer was talking to was. Priestess then replied that the girl was the daughter of the farm owner where Goblin Slayer lived. Once finished, they continued their journey. On the night, as usual, only Goblin Slayer hadn't slept yet. However, it turned out Sword Maiden was still awake and decided to approach Goblin Slayer. Sword Maiden wanted to thank him once again for being able to sleep soundly since Goblin Slayer helped her back then. If that's the case, Goblin Slayer wondered why she was still awake now. Sword Maiden became sulky because she felt teased. By the way, the goblins haven't attacked so far. However, Goblin Slayer estimated they would come tonight or tomorrow. Instantly, Sword Maiden trembled upon hearing that. Then, Priestess suddenly woke up feeling thirsty. As she wanted to get some water, she realized that Sword Maiden was alone with Goblin Slayer. Sword Maiden then said that she couldn't sleep at the moment. Not long after that, Goblin Slayer realized that they were being observed. Priestess then woke the others with a jingling sound of her staff. Goblin Slayer also instructed Sword Maiden to quickly get into the carriage and lock the door. Goblin Slayer and the others had already formed a formation to prepare for the goblin attack. Then, a group of goblins riding wolves appeared. Priestess couldn't use her miracle of light because it would make the goblins flee. As much as possible, they had to eliminate all the goblins. During the fight, Lizardman felt that the defensive method wasn't suitable. Goblin Slayer then asked Lizardman to go around the enemy and change tactics. Goblin Slayer then instructed the others to approach the carriage and asked Priestess to use protection. When protection was active, the goblins thought they would only defend. Therefore, all the goblins advanced to attack. However, this actually benefited Goblin Slayer. Lizardman, who had circled around, used his bone troops to surround the goblins. This way, the goblins could be killed while being pinned down. Dawn had arrived. After killing all the goblins, they counted their number. Before that, Goblin Slayer wanted to know first how many humans these goblins had killed. From what Sword Maiden heard, she answered a team of 5 or more people. After checking, the supplies the goblins brought were insufficient. If they attacked a team of 5 or 6 people, the stolen supplies should be more. Since these goblins were a nomadic tribe, they couldn't be stored in a nest. That means there are still some of them alive. Besides, they also noticed a tattoo shaped like a hand on the backs of the goblins. Setting that aside, for now they still had to escort Sword Maiden to the capital. When reaching the gate, there were already many people queuing to enter. By the way, Goblin Slayer skinned the goblin tattoos as evidence. It seems the queue is getting long because the king went outside the capital. Goblin Slayer guessed it's harvest time. The king would come directly to the place without officials, preventing any possible rebellion. He knew enough about it because he came from the countryside. After waiting for a long time, their turn finally came. The guards asked them to show their identities. When Goblin Slayer showed that he was a silver-ranked adventurer, the guards were a bit skeptical. However, Sword Maiden immediately showed herself and vouched for Goblin Slayer. Seeing Sword Maiden, the guards immediately allowed them to pass without filling out personal data forms. However, Sword Maiden stated that the administrative process must still be carried out. While the others were writing, Goblin Slayer chatted with Priestess. It was their first time coming to the capital. In the past, Goblin Slayer had hoped to bring his sister here.